Okay, it's my pleasure to share this discussion, and I have a pleasure to introduce Kostas. He's the chairman of a committee dedicated to guidelines, and for 1 year more, I think, and Kostas?
Yes.
You did a great job.
I am in the third year of my service.
Okay. And Tony, from Ireland, is also a member of a committee, and also you are taking care of curricula.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you for the invitation.
No, my pleasure. I created the curricula group when I was president. So congratulations for the job you have done so far. I think there is always a hot topic discussion about the fact that we produce a lot of guidelines. Okay. They are European, and they are produced by German, Irish, Greek, etc. But they are used in all Europe. Okay. So, but I am a French. Can I modify the guideline in order to better implement the guideline in France? So this is my question.
Yeah. Obviously, you cannot. Why? Obviously, because a guideline is it's an official document of the society. So either you use it as it is, and we give the opportunity to translate, to officially translate and use it as it is. Otherwise, there is no reason, there is no way to adopt an official document. So, and we might consider sometime in the near future if we develop a procedure about potential adaptation. But at that time, no. And until nowadays, we have our guidelines have been translated. More than 20 of our guidelines have been translated to local languages, and they use as it is. And actually, we have not, at least during my days as a president, as a chair of the guideline committee, we have not received any request about adaptation.
Okay, but usually for you, they don't ask you the permission to adapt. They adapt, and maybe you don't know.
Yes, of course, this can happen. So in order to prevent that, we may work up front. I mean, before developing a guideline, before updating the guideline, it's better to ask the position and to ask for the needs, to ask for the resources of the member societies. And this is what we are currently doing. I mean, we send surveys with key questions. And there are some examples, like for, let's say, the guideline about the management of small bowel lesions, and the informed consent that we took into very serious considerations the points raised by the local societies, and we adapted a little bit our statements in order to meet the requirements.
Perfect. Okay, it's clear. And Tony, your opinion?
So,
can I adapt the guideline to France?
So, Kostas, I don't mean to disagree with you, but I have a slightly different take on this. And, you know, obviously we're all part of the same family. And I think that guidelines are there and not rules. And they're there to be used and shared by the community in Europe and, in fact, worldwide. So if a country, say not just France, but say Ireland, want to adapt the ESGE guidelines and call it the Irish Society of Gastroenterology Guidelines on, say, sedation, for example. And some of it is based on the European guidelines. I personally would have no objections to that, as long as they kind of refer to and acknowledge that their guidelines were based on, say, the European Society of Guidelines, but also make sure that ESG is not in their title. So in other words, you know, adapting the European guidelines to their own local needs, I think is a service that we can help the international community.
Okay. My opinion is that we should not adapt the guideline because all patients should be treated in Europe equally, okay? Same treatment for everybody. Some diagnostic tool for everybody. There is no reason that the patient could be treated differently in Ireland than in France and in Lithuania, etc. So for me, it's clear. But nevertheless, as Tony told, maybe there are some reasons, interesting reasons, to adapt the guidelines. For example, sedation. For example, in France, we cannot perform sedation ourselves. We are obliged to ask an anesthesiologist to perform sedation. So maybe we can adapt the guideline, but you know for which reason you could admit that the country adapt the guideline.
That's why I told you up front that at least for nowadays we don't have a procedure. So according to my roles in the ESGE, I would like to prevent, to safeguard the documents of ESGE. And you know me better, I'm a little bit bureaucratic person, so I would prefer to develop a procedure for adaptation first and then let others adapt. So yes, it might be useful. I'm not so very confident that adaptation, because we can start for something small to whatever. And then you can bring things together. I'm very reluctant.
Okay, I appreciate you are very strict. I like it. But you are right. Why not to write a position statement about the possible adaptation of a guideline to a country, yes, and then to explain, as you told, the process. Okay, why in certain time or for certain reason you could admit an adaptation of a guideline.
Yes,
yes, kind of position statement.
Yes, indeed. I'm definitely a person working with procedures. I'm fond of procedures because they safeguard the outcome and the results. And I think that everything should be done like this, especially when we discuss about guidelines. That means guidance for to secure the outcomes, benefits, safety of the patient, yeah, of the facility and of the healthcare system. Okay. So our responsibility is high.
Yes, and the second step, at least the second discussion we could have, is about, okay, a country adapt the guideline, okay, and then where or should you, can ESGE put the logo or not on the guideline? That means this was more or less the issue you raised. Okay, imagine, yeah, for France, I adapt the guideline, I ask the permission to the boss, Kostas, to adapt the guideline, I adapt the guideline, and so we will keep the logo of ESGE, that means the support of ESGE, or not?
No, I think I'm quite clear on this one, and I'm totally with you guys on this one. If it's adapted, the ESGE logo shouldn't be on the guideline. Okay. Because it is not an ESGE guideline anymore. It is the local society's guideline. But I would personally like the ESGE guideline to be acknowledged, perhaps. And I think there's another approach to guidelines as an endorsement of the guidelines. Again, I'm using a country like Ireland, for example. So we might not be writing our own guidelines on, say, colonic EMR. However, we would endorse the ESGE guidelines on colonic EMR to the gastroenterologists in Ireland. Not all of whom are with the ESGE, okay, because I think it's going to be of benefit to patients in Ireland if we endorse and promote the ESGE guidelines, okay, locally. Okay,
so if I can summarize, you are against adaptation of the guidelines in a European country, okay? And in case, nevertheless, we could discuss a position statement, okay? To explain and to better describe the process in case of adaptation of a guideline. Now, I'm working in a country with low resources. So, okay, we have this discussion sometimes with my colleagues from Africa, and especially from the west part of Africa, speaking French. So they always tell me, okay, guidelines are nice, but okay, we cannot use the guidelines in my country. So they can adapt the guidelines to their country. In this case, there are non-European countries, they can adapt. And what is the role of ESGE? So we can put the logo of ESGE? What?
So the ESGE has foreseen this, And for this reason, we have the so-called cascade guidelines. So cascade guidelines were introduced also by you, Captain, my captain, and this worked a lot. So we have not developed too many because they don't need too many, I mean, actually. So we have developed about bleeding, variceal bleeding. This is the so-called cascade guidelines. So we as ESGE, together with the locals, adapt their requirements and they adapt the guidance to their level. So this is very productive, and it was and it still is a clear benefit offering a great offer from ESGE to the, let's say, developing societies, developing countries.
Some opinion, of course.
Yeah, and I think that goes in line with what you were saying, that if you want to use the ESGE logo and the name for these guidelines adapted to the country, it has to be done by ESGE. You know, like the cascade guidelines. And for those of you who don't know what cascade guidelines is, because I had to Google it as well, but essentially it's guidelines adapted to the healthcare resources or the lack of in a resource-poor country. So, for example, I'm just giving an example, like you know, Barrett's esophagus surveillance. Because the cost may not be recommended on a 2 to 3 yearly interval. Don't quote me on this one. I'm just giving an example. In a country where an endoscopy for, say, dysphagia is limited.
Okay. So I want also to take the opportunity of this discussion to change a little the topic. Okay, and. ESGE is quite active to produce guidelines. Do you think we should share the production of guidelines with another endoscopy society, such as the American Society? Okay. I have my opinion. I can express my opinion now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And I think the guidelines are our treasure. You cannot share your treasure.
I completely agree. And yeah, share, I don't know if it is, to my poor English, I don't know if it is the correct word, but even co-developing a guideline is very, very difficult. So and it may lead to significant misunderstandings between the societies that may compromise, I mean, joint efforts to meet our patients' needs. But sharing, no. Sometimes co-development, yes, but sometimes. And everything should be clear up front, everything. But sharing, no. I mean, for sure it's our property, and for sure, I'm not sure that they will meet their own needs. Because especially if you take the paradigm of the Americans, actually, France, it's a different world. It's a different world.
And in fact, when you speak about sharing the production of guidelines, also we could share the production with another European society, such as ESL, ECHO, etc. This, we can accept this, and we also could promote to produce a guideline with ECHO about the endoscopic diagnosis of IBD, for example. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, but not with an endoscopy society.
So I'm going to sit on the fence on this one, and so my own personal opinion, I'm just going to stir the pot here a bit, Thierry, is that I think there are benefits in co-producing guidelines with another big society, like say the American Society of Gastrointestinal Endoscopy. The advantage being that it's much more powerful if two big societies come up saying the same thing. But as Kostas and Thierry, you have alluded to, there are logistical issues with this because of trying to merge two perhaps differing processes into one document. So I think there are benefits, but perhaps the pain is not worth the gain.
No, there is also another reason that I don't. Okay, my personal opinion. Okay, I don't want or I don't wish ESGE to share the guidelines with ESGE, is that as a gastroenterologist, I'm always interested to have two guidelines. I have a guideline from a German society, a guideline from an American society. So sometimes I select the guideline I prefer. No, I'm joking a little, but nevertheless, I think it's always better to have two guidelines in the same times. They are both treasures.
Indeed, yes, but it's always difficult to collaborate. In my opinion, I will refrain from sharing guidelines with endoscopy societies. I would say in a different way, joint efforts with other scientific societies beyond endoscopy. But even though always there would be clear rules. So because, okay, there are even bigger societies in Europe than we are. So if you try to cooperate with ECHO, let's say, or with ESL.
No, it's okay.
Yes, we do, but clearly from the beginning what we are doing. And this will be for the benefit of the patients, because we will see the benefit, the patient overall.
No, and there is also another reason is that sometimes the recommendations are weak. It's, the evidence is weak. So it's not so bad to have the opinion, expert opinion from USA, which could be different from expert opinion from Europe. I think it's also important.
If it is only for expert opinions, okay. If it is a recommendation, we have problems.
Now, last question. It takes time to produce a guideline. Okay, I remember when I was a president, I say, we should write 50 guidelines. So I had a list, I wrote the list of all guidelines, okay, 50 guidelines. Now, I gave a list to the committee chairman. I told at this moment her to say, okay, now you have a list, follow a list, okay. But 50 guidelines, it's a lot, and it's expensive, that's time-consuming, etc. So I think you invented, I had more or less the same idea, but updating more easily the guideline. That means to have a permanent working group for each guideline, and they can easily update the guideline. Every year, for example.
No, yep. So just recently we completed a standard operating procedure about the development and the update of the guidelines. So we have, it doesn't mean that until recently we say that, okay, this guideline is 5 years old, we have to update it. From now on, this is not true. Because there is a team, there is the people in the committee who oversee the different aspects of the guidelines, who meet at the end of the year and decide which of the guidelines will be updated. And there can be a full update, there can be a partial update, and there can be that we all envision the living guideline. Unfortunately or fortunately, there are not too many topics pertinent to living guideline. Living guideline, we mean a guideline that is constantly being updated. I mean, and there's, in my opinion, only one topic in endoscopy. This is artificial intelligence this time. So we try to save forces. I mean, because at the end, sometimes quantity is against quality. So our primary focus now is to secure quality and to secure our treasure. So sometimes there is no need. I mean, we discussed many times in the past. We have an aged guideline about the management of foreign bodies ingestion and bolus ingestion. Why should update it? It's 15 years old. No need. It's still current.
Okay.
Or other guidelines. We have the capsule, for example, endoscopy. Yes, but there is. It's relatively young. It's published in January 2023. However, there is so much information accumulating regarding the panenteric capsule. We will wait for 5 years or 6 years? No. But we can do a partial update, small update of the existing guideline.
Yeah, okay. I agree. Okay. So thanks to both of you, Tony, Kostas. I realize that to share a guideline committee or to share a curricular working group, you should be very strict, a little tyrannic or dictator. Okay. This is the message I got.
What can I do?
But okay, congratulations nevertheless. This is your role, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.